This is Josh Bycer from GameWisdom.com. I hope you enjoyed this Critical Thought, your daily discussion on game design. We got a good critical thought for you today. We're going to be talking about the topic of responsiveness or feel when it comes to controller design. And I can tell you right now, this is not going to be a topic we're going to get through in one critical thought. And if there's any aspects of this you'd like me to touch on more, or of course suggestions for future critical thoughts, be sure to leave them below. When it comes to the feel of a controller, the feel of your control scheme, this is one part design and one part philosophy. This is like for car guys and gals, the idea of, the handling of a car. Now, we can talk about things from a mechanic or a number space, exact like radius of the wheel. I'm using car lingo, I have no idea what that is, and stuff like that. But what it really comes down to is someone getting behind there and trying it. And the same can be said when we talk about responsiveness in a video game. Now, of course, we have our lovely controller here as an example. When we're talking about the feel of a controller or the control scheme, there are several different parts of this I want to touch on. And the two biggies are going to be movement and kind of like button responsiveness or gameplay lag. We'll start with like motion or movement. So if you remember from a few months ago, I did a critical thought on the difference between a gamepad and a keyboard and mouse in terms of control schemes. And the keyboard is better for one-to-one, as in I push a button, something immediately happens. When we're talking about a gradual kind of control or making micro adjustments, the analog stick is superior to it, because you get more than just either on or off, you get all the motions in between. And this is very important whenever you're going to have essentially multiple states of movement in a game. For instance, in the Soulsborne series, you have your crawl, you have your kind of walk, and then you have your run. And the run is modified by pressing the dodge button. But when it comes to walk versus crawl kind of thing, or like that's creep along, it really goes like this. Like the first half of moving the analog stick is the crawl, and then anything beyond that is the run. And what that means is it basically you're not having to control, the game is not detecting the full range of the analog stick. It's only basically if it's almost like if X is less than 50, do this. If X is 50 greater than 51, do that. Now, of course, those are just random numbers. Please don't use that as exacts there. But whenever you're going to have motion based on multiple degrees of variability, you really want your game to be built around a gamepad. Oh, but I didn't actually just turn it on there. But a really good example of this would be Super Meat Boy. And I think we've talked about Super Meat Boy. I did a play of it a while ago. I've been wanting to get back to it too. But the thing about Super Meat Boy is that it is a very challenging platformer, because not only are you making adjustments while you're moving, but you're also making them while you're in the air. And the game's physics-based system basically allows for a whole lot of variability there. Now, for other kinds of platformers, they may use almost like a gradual, like a get up and go kind of feel to their motion. Meaning, when I push forward, I'm going to have to get this right here. If I push all the way to the right here, my character doesn't immediately go into full run. They'll start at like a slower gait. If I hold it for a few seconds, they'll get faster until they hit top speed. Mario Brothers would be a good example of this. When it comes to quote-unquote tight controls or fine controls, usually you want things to be almost instantaneous. If I push to the right, characters should immediately go at their speed. When I recently played Momodora, that was a very responsive control scheme, and it really helps when you're playing an action-based game like that. Now, the other part of this kind of responsiveness or this feel comes into almost like a delay between button and action. As we just said a few seconds ago, when we talk about one-to-one, basically I push a button, character does something instantaneous. when we're playing strategy or turn-based games, it's very easy to see. I push a button, the command happens. There's no delay, we don't need to wait any point, stuff like that. But when we're playing action games, some developers, especially those that are first time, sometimes leave this delay or this lag in that gets in the way. And to show you what I mean, we're going to use the very complicated system of my hands. So let's say that this hand here is pushing the button down, and this hand is like the little guy. So I'll make like a little figurine here. So if it's 1 to 1, it goes like this. Push, guy goes up, like that. When there's that delay, it goes like this. Push, character does like a little animation and then jumps. Now, to the outside, that doesn't sound that big of a deal, but that split millisecond between action and button press can really get in the way, and it leads to sometimes control schemes feeling cumbersome. Because remember, that little delay, no matter how slight it is, has to be factored in whenever you're doing any kind of jumping or multiple platform actions. Games that love to have like those, those one block wide tiles or platforms you have to jump on, and you have to jump on them constantly across a bottomless pit because of course you have to. And that split millisecond of delay can cause trouble. Another thing that we see in games that developers tend to slip up on is almost a delay between the next action. What that means is when you're pressing keys on a keyboard or buttons on a gamepad, what happens is you're essentially sending a signal to your game engine. And the engine is going to be reading for different signals based on the buttons that you're pushing, the keys on your keyboard, mouse, whatever. And what happens is, for a lot of games, some developers make it so once you input an action, no other action can be registered for a very specific or specified amount of time. Usually until whatever animation's happening on screen ends, or even a slight millisecond after. And what ends up happening is that this creates a very cumbersome system. Because for anyone who's played an action game, you know that when you're in the heat of the moment, you're going to be pressing buttons very quickly. And you don't want, for instance, let's say I do my jump, I land, and I immediately press the fire button, but the game will not register it until the character finishes his, it's kind of like lands and then like gets back up motion. And these kinds of issues, again, we are talking about in the milliseconds. We're not even in like seconds here, but it still is a big deal. Now, for some games, they have an explicit kind of lag or delay, but this is built into the pacing or the flow. And Soulsborne is a really good example of that. When you're playing any of these Souls titles, what happens is the game is constantly reading your inputs. But if you're doing an attack, like let's say I'm pressing the button here, if you can hopefully see it, and when I press that button, the character does his swing. If I press the button again while he's in mid-animation, instead of the game not registering it, it will pick that up, but will cue it for the next action. And this was an explicit choice, because they want you to have almost like a slower pace when it comes to combat. This isn't an action game like Devil May Cry or a beat 'em up where you're going to be mashing buttons constantly. They want there to be a specific gait, I think that's the right term there, for your combat. And if you press more than one button or you're just constantly slamming R1, it's going to come back to bite you when you're trying to perform another action and your guy immediately queues up the next attack. Now, another part of this kind of responsiveness when it comes to control schemes is kind of like a button priority or an option priority. What that means, as we were just saying a few seconds ago, some developers like it to have, when I press a button or I perform an action, nothing else can happen until that action completes. In Let It Die, for instance, because the game has a very loose control scheme, and part of that is the fact that once you start attacking, no other action can be done. So when I'm doing like my 1, 2, 3 punch, if the enemy moves out of the way or does something, I'm still waiting for these animations to finish up. And that leaves you kind of like standing there, whiffing on the air. One of the things that we see, especially in high skill level action games, is your dodge or your defend button has priority above all else. So when I'm swinging my weapon around, whatever, if the enemy goes to attack, I press the dodge button, my character will immediately dodge out of whatever action they're doing. And this is important, because if you want the player to properly defend or get out of the way, they need to be sure that they can perform that action at any time. If I'm, swinging I will never use like a heavy swing that takes like 2 seconds to go off, because if I'm doing that and it misses, I have 2 seconds where the enemy can just beat me up and there's nothing I can do. But if my dodge has priority, then, if I'm going for this swing and the guy, dodges out of the way there, I can immediately cancel that out. And that takes me to the final point for today. And again, this is not a topic we're going to be covering every part of it in one talk. But as you know, I've been trying to learn Street Fighter V, and since I finished Bloodborne, I know the skills must translate, so I should become the greatest Street Fighter V player next. But one of the things that was really screwing me up was the timing on the button presses and the input. And the reason is what Capcom did for their input is different, where it's not what I'm used to when I think of button presses and again that flow of combos. And I'm going to show you what I mean using, again, the highly technological advance of my fists. So let's say I'm going to turn here so you can sort of see me go like that. So let's say I'm Ryu and I want to perform a punch punch Hadouken. So again, it'll be punch punch, go like that. Now for my kind of thinking, or my kind of timing, it would be punch punch, and as the fist is going back, I'm inputting the quarter circle forward punch so he does the Hadouken. That's not what Capcom did with Street Fighter V. What they do is this: it goes punch punch, and then like as you're doing the second punch, the game wants you to start cueing the quarter circle forward for the fireball command. And the second that second punch connects, you're going to press punch again, because you've already sort of queued up the quarter circle forward. And when you do that right, again, it goes punch punch and then immediately the Hadouken. Now again, for those of you watching this, and I hope you enjoy my little play acting there, what I just did, those two examples, it sounds like they're both the same thing, but it's not. And again, when we're talking about this kind of handling or this responsiveness with control design, we're in the milliseconds. And to get this properly done right, it takes a lot of play testing, and you need people who understand the feel of a controller or the feel of a keyboard and mouse to get it right. And with Street Fighter V, this is one of those things that it may be a deal breaker for me, because I'm not sure if I can adjust my internal timing for it. And this also goes into play when you have moves that are like hold back and then you do the attack. Because when you're doing like the attack and the combo, you have to preemptively start holding back while you're performing another action. Now for fighting game players who have already, they've gotten used to this, they've mastered, it's part of their, internal wiring, it's not that big of a deal. But for someone like me, it's like trying to almost like retrain yourself to drive on the left-hand side of the road if you're visiting another country. And one of the things that Street Fighter Capcom really did not do right, and going back to talking about tutorial design, is it never mentions or lets you really practice that kind of timing. I had to watch enough demonstration videos to try to see what the game wanted me to do. And again, that's not good. The best example again would be something like Skullgirls, which did a much better job of explaining tutorial flow. But we're going to wrap up today's critical thought here. To summarize, again, when it comes to understanding the tactile feel or the responsiveness of your game, it's going to take a lot of play testing. And again, there's multiple areas we can explore this. Again, even just as simply as motion of your analog stick versus the motion of a key press, that's an entire topic in of itself. Again, input delay, lag, queuing up commands, and again, the different degrees of motion that you're looking for. Like I said, we can't do this all in one episode, and there's any aspects you want me to expand on in a later critical thought, let me know in the comments below. But the golden rule for today's thought is this: if you want to see if your control scheme is good or if it's responsive, play test the hell out of it. And I mean, get a wide variety of people, your experts, your newcomers, your middle of the way kind of characters, or people I mean. Now, like I said, when we're talking about this kind of feel, we're not talking about turn-based or heavily abstracted titles. That usually is one-to-one. I push a button, guy swings sword. There's no, ifs, ands, or buts about that. But again, when it comes to even just the feel of your UI, you can't see me putting my hands on my keyboard there. That is, again, another topic. But let's wrap it up here. As always, thank you so much for watching and enjoying these videos. If you're a first timer, be sure to like and subscribe. Check out game-wisdom.com, where we examine the art and science of games. And be sure to vote for the 1000 Let's Play. Again, your choices are a run of the Zachtronics titles, a play of one of the grand strategy games from Paradox, or a look at something like Skyrim or Fallout 3 or 4. And other than that, be sure to check out the Twitch stream most nights at 10 Eastern. I'm going to be hopefully doing some more streaming tonight, but we shall see. But otherwise, once again, I'm Josh Bycer. Have a great night, and I will talk to you again tomorrow with more content all around. And until then, have a great night. Also, I hope you guys didn't get snowed in too badly, because I think it's snowed for pretty much the entire morning, afternoon here. So hopefully you'll be able to get out of your homes tomorrow. But until then, see you all tomorrow. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and of course share with your friends. It always helps out. For daily posts on all manner of game design and industry topics, check out game-wisdom.com. To support the site and everything that I do, be sure to check out the Patreon campaign. If we can hit goals, it will mean more content for everyone to enjoy, and I'll be able to support myself and my household. If you want to follow me, you can find me on Twitter at GWBycer for updates throughout the day and random thoughts from me. And lastly, you can find me on Twitch right over there at GWBycer for daily streams most nights around 10 Eastern. Thanks again for watching the video, and be sure to check out more great content coming to the Game Wisdom channel real soon.